Dan, you've set quite a roadmap for Avidyne for the future. It's been an interesting genesis watching Avidyne stake its place in a number of different technologies, but boy, you sure have a phenomenal roadmap ahead of you. If you can, run down your priorities for Avidyne for the near future.
Yes, Jim. Our number one priority is to maximize our opportunity around the ADS-B, the global ADS-B transition for surveillance. And there's much more to come on that, I think, in terms of what people use it for and the kinds of products that we and others make. So that's our number one priority right now. And what we're trying to do is use the products that we make for ADS-B as a platform for our connectivity future. So that's why our IFDs are equipped with Wi-Fi and Bluetooth and wireless access point capabilities in them. And we're working on connectivity and so forth. So people who do a higher end upgrade with our products are going to have quite a future ahead of them for connectivity as well as ADS-B functionality. So that's our number one priority.
Well, obviously the launch of the 550 and certification is a big milestone for you, especially since, let's face it, the old joke about 5 pounds in a 2-pound box could not be more apropos to what you're doing with the 550 right now. It's interesting that you've got a box with all these capabilities, and now we've got attitude information as well. This has the potential to really change the cockpit of the future. Comments?
It sure does. And the 550's initial certification is kind of a tease, I think, on what it will eventually be used for. It'll immediately be used for people who have a cluttered cockpit, can drop this thing in and get synthetic vision, and that'll be really helpful. We're already selling lots of them for that application. But it starts to be kind of internally, sometimes we say, a universal flight display. It gets more and more functionality, does everything. And what other things are going to start going away, and how are people going to arrange their cockpits? And we obviously plan future generations of all different sizes and shapes, and I think that there's kind of a static model right now for what a flight deck ought to look like, and I think it might change, especially where people might consider iPads to be more and more of a part of how they design their flight deck and their capabilities, and you mix that with all this connectivity, I think you're going to see things be pretty different in years to come. One of the reasons we're talking about this now is to get people thinking about what all the different kinds of applications that may show up. Certainly the commercial application developers that are out there for flight at all, I think when we connect them up, I can't even imagine what these guys are going to come up with in terms of neat new applications for you to have while you're flying around. I also think that there's a lot of things that can happen on voice and social once you have the connectivity. So we see this, as has been in other walks of life, as an enabling technology that will result in lots of different interesting things, many of which we would never predict. We're very interested in some of the ones that have to do with safety and using it for a virtual co-pilot and providing ways for some kind of the connectivity to make flight operations safer. But there'll be lots and lots of ways to do that we won't think of and others will, and other things that people think of that'll come out of a connected cockpit.
You mentioned UAVs.
Yeah, so Avidyne's active with a couple of UAV projects, and we went into this realizing that when we're talking about UAVs, we're not talking about DJI Phantoms. We're talking about things that are the size of airplanes. They're big, and some of them are fast, and they can take avionics that look similar to what we have now. And certified is interesting for certain functions, low cost with a high degree of engineering validation is interesting. But also, some of the basic functionality we have is interesting. What an IFD will let a pilot do in an airplane, navigation-wise, what any FMS in general aviation will let you do. No UAV can do that stuff. They're dumb. They go point to point, or some guy's driving them. They don't have the ability to fly procedures and all these other kinds of things. So this is really interesting stuff to the UAV community. And since we have a networked architecture, we can have an IFD in the panel networked to an IFD on your iPad right next to it. Or we can have an IFD in a panel networked to an IFD on the ground. Or we can have an IFD in a UAV networked to a guy on the ground. All works exactly the same. So it's quite, that's kind of a fallout of the architecture.
But the operative concept is IFDs everywhere?
That's what we want to have, IFDs everywhere.
Finally, you mentioned that for a company your size, that a significant amount of your resources are devoted to innovation. There's an awful lot of hype and mirrors out there right now, and worse, a whole lot of duplication. Is that going to be enough for Avidyne to not only survive, but grow and prosper in the future?
If I look at the good ideas we have versus the ones we're actually working on, there's probably a 10-to-1 ratio there. So I don't feel like we're running out of interesting things to do. And I think that the next generation of changes in general aviation is going to be not incremental. It's going to be more of a disruptive change. The next generation of airframes are not going to look like these airframes. They're probably not going to run on gas. They're probably not always going to use a runway. They're going to be a whole different level of pilot capability required, meaning a lot less. They're going to be a whole lot safer. So I kind of feel like there's a disruption in the offing here, and we want to be a part of it. We're not going to be an airframer, but we can supply a lot of technology into that world.
Dan Schwinn, thank you for joining us on Aero-TV and Airborne.
My pleasure. Thanks, Jim.
Aero-TV is brought to you by
Your Cessna 172 or 177 wants a TrueTrack autopilot, and so do many others. Visit TrueTrackAP.com and get your airplane added to the model list. The TrueTrack autopilot at TrueTrackAP.com.
Progressive Aerodyne's Sea-Ray Elite offers turbocharged Rotax power and Garmin G3X Touch avionics. Incredibly well equipped, you can fly away in this best-in-category amphib for less than $160,000. Visit searay.com for more details.